I've been thinking about mortality recently, more than usual, for obvious reasons. I never really had a sense of my mortality until I got this diagnosis of polycystic kidney disease, or at least I never felt my mortality to that degree, which is not to say that I ever had that sense of invisibility that teenagers often have, as I didn't. I was careful and or cowardly in my own ways, which is not a bad thing. I postponed many adult activities until I was actually an adult, which I think there's something to be said for that. But something really changed that day in late 2001 when I found out that I had polycystic kidney disease. I was about to say that I found out that my body betrayed me, but I've long had the sense that my body betrayed me. I have allergies of various kinds. And I remember thinking one day when I was in some terrible Northern California allergy season, which was probably a mixture of pollen and smoke from a fire somewhere. There's always a fire somewhere. And I was congested, my nose was stuffed and running. Either one of those is bad enough. And it was just maddening, that kind of stuffy, runny, you can't even think. You're just, this sort of blob fighting to breathe. And I had the thought that my body was trying to kill me. I knew that wasn't really the case, but I sort of believed it the way one believes a story that seems to make sense out of things that don't make any sense. And in addition to that, I have food allergies, various kinds. Nothing that's ever been bad enough to really, really hurt me, except, so let's go back to chicken. When I was a kid, I never liked chicken. I thought, oh, it's gross, whatever, I don't like it. Thing is, when you're young, you don't, and possibly neurodivergence, helps with this, with the problems with interoception and whatnot. But when you're a kid and food makes you feel bad, you don't have the conceptual vocabulary or the literal vocabulary to distinguish between I don't like it aesthetically, that is yucky, and this is actually causing negative reactions of some kind in my body, not just aesthetics in my mind. Not a sensory issue, though one does sense it in its own way, interoception. And so what happened is sometime when I was less than 10, I would say, maybe 9 or so, we had chicken for dinner, and then I went outside, and my dad had just mowed the lawn, and for some reason I was playing by like taking a wiffle bat, maybe. These memories are so long ago. We're talking more than 40 years. And I was playing in such a way that I was like swinging the bat and in the grass, the newly mown grass, and blowing grass up into the sky. Not the sky, but into the air around me. And the allergic reactions to chicken and grass together, I ended up in the emergency room. And after that, we knew that chicken was actually a problem. Um, and then conveniently, I learned turkey was a problem later. And this was like a perfect double blind test because I was at a friend's house and we had hot dogs because we were kids, whatever. And I said, "This is funny. This makes me feel the way I feel when I eat chicken, except we didn't eat chicken." And my friend's mom, who's actually a registered nurse, um, she went and got the hot dog wrapper out of the garbage, and she had not realized that it was turkey hot dogs, and so we had a test where I didn't know what I was eating, so it wasn't psychological that way, and she didn't know what she was serving me, so she didn't tip me off somehow. Not that I would have thought there was anything to tip off, but so yeah, so I ended up in the emergency room. My dad took me in with an asthma attack. The chicken thing, it's weird. It's a tightness in the chest that goes all the way through to my back. It's in my back as much as my chest. It's very strange. It's not like my reactions to anything else. I haven't talked to anyone who's had a reaction like that. I pretty much the only person I can think of that I've known that had an allergic reaction to chicken had a reaction to anything chicken. She couldn't eat eggs. She couldn't use feathers and pillows and whatnot. Whereas for me, it was just consuming chicken in post-hatched bird form. You know, eggs are fine, etc. And I believe I went to the emergency room not a lot as a kid, but multiple times. At least once with an absolute crushing headache, which is probably brought on by some other allergen stimulus. I don't remember the details of what happened before that. I mean, this is a very long time ago. And I think this was one of the times when I was in there for asthma. They gave me some, powerful prescription asthma medicine, like more than you would get in your just, rescue inhaler or inhaler like some stuff you have to go to the hospital to get, I'm sure. I mean, it could have just been theophylline, which is also available in inhalers and whatnot, but it was like some kind of maximum strength. I don't even remember what method they used to get it into my body. But I remember, I was a kid. I had heard of drugs. They told us about drugs in school and whatnot. This was before DARE, but we still had some kind of goofy drug education thing. And so I knew that there were drugs out there in the world, and I knew that some of them were stimulants that were uppers that made you up. And I specifically remember there in the emergency room, they somehow gave me this medication. And at first, I was just so intensely, wired by it, electrified, just, everything buzzing in a bad way. Um, and I remember the thought that I can't believe people do this to themselves. I recognize the idea that it was a drug of some similarity to something that people do recreationally. So I was thinking, like, I can't believe anyone does this to themselves. This is awful. And then, with time, as the initial shock, I'm really thinking it might have been an injection of some kind with like that intensity. But after a little bit, it started to mellow out a little bit. And I remember there was one point where I thought, oh, this is why. And it was just that good feeling. Like, I would hesitate to even say I was high, but it was a good drug feeling. I mean, I was like 9 years old or something like that. I didn't even drink alcohol until I was in college, which I think was probably a good idea in the long run, just for brain development issues and just the pragmatics of, trying to drink or do drugs or whatnot, living in a house with the parents. All that stuff is easier when you are not living in the house with the parents. But living in a big, ugly, quasi-brutalist building with hundreds of, horny young people who are also living outside their home for the first time. So, as I said, I have, from an early age, I've often had the sense of my body betraying me that way, but it was always like, oh, my body's betraying me, but, as much as it seems like I'm never going to breathe again, I know that with time and or medication, my nose will stop running. It will stop being stuffy. I'd never had any betrayals of my body that couldn't be fixed, either by waiting or by, some chemical intervention. But when I learned that I had this disease, and I learned that it's incurable, which is kind of misleading. It's like, my kidneys will never not be polycystic. The cysts cannot be removed. The function will not be restored. It can be cured in the sense that one can get a kidney transplant. And when you get a working kidney, somehow, by, removing one from someone and leaving them in a bathtub full of ice or whatever, don't do that. My lawyers have told me to tell you not to do that. If you get a donor kidney, living or dead, then you still have the polycystic kidney disease, but it is cured in the sense that you have a working kidney. But still, technically speaking, as I said, I saw the word incurable somewhere, I'm sure, in all of this. I think when I finally had a doctor's appointment about it, I asked what could be done, and basically, they can't be removed, or, it's not like you can go in there and take care of a cyst, like in some parts of the body, or even in the kidney. If I had a cyst, that's, my parents got tested for for polycystic kidney disease because it's an inherited genetic condition. So I want to see, just curiosity and for their health's sake, which one of them had it. And the answer was neither, because a very small portion of polycystic kidney disease, PKD patients, don't get it from one of their parents, but get it from a spontaneous mutation. Some gene just decides to go rogue and make innumerable cysts in my kidneys. As I said in the video the other day, the word innumerable is in my diagnosis that I got. Kidneys have innumerable cysts. So, looping back around, I feel I'm starting into some weird cyclical kind of narrative style. But when I got this diagnosis, I had this sense that my body had failed me, was betraying me, could betray me to a degree I'd never felt before. It was like an order of magnitude more sense. My sense of mortality increased by an order of magnitude, if that makes sense. I even I started writing in my journal. It's kind of embarrassing that this was a 29-year-old and not a 14-year-old or something like that, but I started writing death sentence day number. Oh, it's death sentence day 7 or something, and going on about, just whatever's going on in my head, including the disease. And we just had 9/11, just to, put on the stress. It wasn't something that affected me personally, directly, but, it was on my mind. It was on everyone's mind. It was also my last term of graduate school, and I was trying to wrap that up. And so, yeah, that was stress, a good kind of stress. School can be a good kind of stress, but still stress. But so then this diagnosis on top of all of that, and then George Harrison died. You only have so many Beatles. And oh yeah, so my parents decided to get checked out for polycystic kidney disease, and neither one had it because I was one of these lucky mutants. My dad turned out to have some liver cyst that wasn't really a problem, because sometimes people get cysts, and most of them are not harmful as long as they aren't in your kidneys, and innumerable. Really, I'm sure innumerable would be bad anywhere. But my mom turned out had breast cancer. I guess she missed a regular mastectomy or two, and sort of snuck up on her, but it was still early enough to take care of. She got surgery, she had chemotherapy, everything. She is, still, my goofy old mom, 20 plus years after that. But there was a lot going on in, the last quarter of 2001. Even just listing it, I'm sort of starting to get exhausted with all these things that happened. But, and I haven't even talked about it all, but so it was very intense, and it was really heavy. And my first wife, who I was married to, I remember we were talking about it, and we had the idea that we didn't know how long I had, so we wanted to sort of like just make it as good as we could for then. Of course, I have outlived that marriage by many, many years. That was 2001, and then late 2002, I 2002, 2003, no, end of 2003 is when I got diagnosed with depression because I was having a major episode that included but may have preceded getting fired from a job, my first actual professional job out of library school. And the marriage ended in the summer of 2005, but there's a quote from Arrested Development where Tobias says, well, I don't want to blame everything on 9/11. And I certainly wouldn't blame everything on 9/11, but that's around the time that really something started breaking in me. And but still, so last 20 years, I've known that I had this ticking time bomb of a sort in me. I knew that eventually I could lose enough kidney function to have, problems, but that could be 10 years, could have been 40 years, whatever. It turned out to be just over 20 years between the time I learned I had it and the time I learned that my kidneys were actually failing. And that message that I was in kidney failure, as I said, that with getting the disease, I mean, my sense of my own mortality went up by another order of magnitude. At the beginning of, it's been over 2 years now, the beginning of 2022, so, almost 2 years into the pandemic and worrying about dying of one thing, I get told that I didn't get told that I was dying, but in those months, around the time of diagnosis, before I started dialysis, I had a feeling. At first, I thought it seemed. I thought that I might have had long COVID. I don't think I've gotten COVID, but I'm certainly not aware that I have. But some people early on, or especially got a mild case, you just get a cold for a bit, and you think, oh well, this is a normal winter cold. You don't realize that it's actually a very mild case of something else. Another reason I don't think I had COVID before was, as you may have gathered from my story so far, I don't get mild cases of things, and I don't, but, it seemed like long COVID. I was, dragging, I was brain foggy, I was not just mentally depressed, but like physically depressed, like you're just sort of dragging yourself along, walking through oatmeal or something. And now that I have stopped feeling that way after I had surgery and then dialysis, I think what I felt was dying. Just a little bit. Microdosing death as a treat, perhaps. But my kidneys are failing, which means that to some degree, everything else would fail, and maybe already was slowly failing, because if not failing, at least not working right, because your kidneys clean your blood, and everything in your body needs blood. And so if the blood's bad, everything's going to be bad. But so between like feeling that and just knowing about the kidney failure, putting those words on it, the word end stage renal disease, stage 5, there is no stage 6. I had a lot bigger sense of mortality than I did before. And I'm really getting kind of worn out by thinking about it and talking about it right now. And I've been going for 25 minutes. So I will be back with another video probably tomorrow. And I figured out that I have a control to use to turn this thing off.